Well, welcome everybody to 40 Plus. Thank you for joining us. This will be a little different, and most of our topics deal with methods to use for job seeking. Today we're talking about a tool, and let me share the screen. And all right, this is out of necessity. We've all had to learn how to use this tool called Zoom. And I can congratulate everyone here. You've got the first part down. You've learned how to join a meeting. Um, so what we're going to talk about today, we're going to discuss just remote meetings, quick in general, how to join your meeting, doing things like muting and unmuting, arranging your screen, uh, screen sharing, which is an important part of Zoom meetings, and then for those of you who might need to schedule your own meeting or host a meeting, we'll discuss that toward the end. We're certainly not going to cover every feature Zoom has, but I'm hoping to get through all the primary things that you might deal with in your job search, both in attending one-on-ones and possibly networking meetings as well. So just remote meetings in general, Zoom is not the only one, and it's certainly not the first. You might along the way encounter WebEx meetings, Google Meet, GoToMeeting, Ring Central, Microsoft Team, and I left Skype off the list. It's among the first ones there. They all have different ways to work, but the basic functions that they all have in common are you have to join the meeting. There's some way to mute and unmute yourself. There's a way to turn video on and off, and there's a way to chat with others in the meeting. So we will be using Zoom as the main tool we're talking about today. I'd like to point out when doing remote meetings, if this is your first time on a particular platform or don't use it frequently, please sign on early. Don't wait until 30 seconds before the meetings to start. Try to sign in like 10 minutes early just to make sure everything's working the way you expect. And take advantage of the speaker microphone test. Get that all resolved before you're actually in the meeting. Most of these platforms give some way of checking out your speaker and seeing that in the microphone are working. Before we continue, this discussion is primarily Zoom on Windows. Mac, I would expect should be similar, but I don't have a Mac, so I can't be certain about that. And for tablets and smartphones, things are going to look different. They have most of the same features, but because of the screen size, they have a different way of using those features. I'm going to go through a section at a time, and we'll pause after each section for some questions, so we don't have to wait until the very end. And when you put questions in the chat, start it with a couple question marks so we could quickly see which ones are questions rather than comments going in the chat. All right, thank you. And now let's talk about joining a Zoom meeting. As I said, congratulations to all of you. You figured it out for Zoom. But what Zoom has in common with a lot of other platforms is that you get a URL to click on. Some of them are a little even fancier, like WebEx gives you a button you could click on, and most of them automatically install a desktop application, and that's what runs. I know WebEx is that way, GoToMeeting works that way, and Zoom does as well. Once you get joined Zoom, you will see your control bar. The most common bar you'll see is what's on top, giving you options to mute and unmute, see who participants are in the meeting, look at the chat, share your screen. And then if you've got a smaller screen, you might see what looks like in the bottom where some of the options are not showing, and you have to click on the little more icon. And then when you do that, it shows the options that are that got compressed into the smaller, shorter bar. For muting and unmuting, you are all now muted. That there is an icon in the lower left-hand corner of your screen that looks like a fancy recording studio microphone. And if it doesn't have a slash through it, if you click on it, you will mute your microphone. Once you do that, you will see a red slash through it, and it will say unmute. And if you click on it again, you will unmute your microphone. WebEx has a very similar looking icon. And if you're ever in a WebEx section, be careful, because in Zoom, to tell whether you're muted or not is whether the slash goes through the microphone. In WebEx, it changes color. The slash is always there. So my first WebEx meeting, I ended up continually muting myself because I thought I still had to unmute. There are other speaker options. If you look at on the side of the mute icon, there is, let me see here. On the mute icon, there's a little, looks like an up arrow. If you click on that, you will see all sorts of options. I'm pointing this out because if you're having trouble with your speaker, your system may have selected the wrong speaker. And here's a list of all the speakers you have available. You can see the one I'm using is checked. This very top one is the speaker built into my laptop. I'm using an external speaker. I have not yet figured out what this third one is. I think it may be because I had connected to some other speaker in the past. This list also gives you the option to test your speaker and microphone if you did not do that before joining. And there are other settings that I have not often used. And in general, whenever you see one of these little up arrows next to an icon, it gives you more options you can choose. All right, the video muting is very much the same as the speaker, the microphone. There's an icon there that says stop video. If you click on it, your video shuts off. And then it has the slash through it. And if you click on it again, you start your own video. And there are options for the video, but they're not as, they're less frequently used than any of the options for the audio. And, okay, now we're going to talk about arranging your Zoom screen. And you could, if you want to, try out the different options as I'm presenting them. There's three primary views. There's a gallery view, a speaker view, and a full screen view. The gallery view is when you see everybody on the same screen or up to the maximum that that Zoom can handle, which is 25 on a single screen. Up in the upper right-hand corner is where your option shows up. So this is showing gallery view here, and there's an icon in the upper right says speaker view. If you click on that, you will see the, oh, I'm sorry, this is still gallery view. Gallery view gives you several options when you're in gallery view. If you hover over any one picture, it'll show a triple dot icon. If you click on that, you can see there's options to chat with the person you're looking at, and also you can hide non-video participants. Sometimes that if you've got a large number of people on the screen, hiding the non-video participants can help just draw your focus to the people that you're most likely to be relating with. You can also hide yourself. Oh, once you hide those participants, some text shows up at the top with an option to turn those non-video participants on. I have discovered the hard way that sometimes when you hide hide things, you're struggling to figure out how to get them back. So you can also hide yourself with that triple dot menu. Hiding self view will remove your picture from the gallery as well, which can sometimes cause alarm when you're trying to figure what you did to yourself. And then there's also an option that shows up on the top that says show self view. Will put your live video back into the gallery.
Ron, we have a question from the chat, sir.
I will have questions at the end of this section, and then we can. I mean, it's coming up soon. All right, speaker view. If you click on the upper right-hand corner where the speaker view option, you see a large screen with the speaker and up to 5 other participants along the top of the screen. And again, you could click on the gallery view to go back to gallery view. There's also a full screen mode, which is this broken square. If you click on that, then the speaker video fills the entire screen, and the participants are floating on top of that. It's a bar that's floating over the main window, and you can reposition that window anywhere you want on the screen. And there's some options with that little window. You can hide it completely. You can see the speaker only, and you can see multiple participants. Okay, we're going to talk about chatting briefly, and then I'll stop for questions. So we're going to talk about showing the sidebar for the chat, how to select a chat recipient, sending a message. We won't actually discuss sharing files here today, but there is an option to do that as well. On your control bar on the bottom, on the very right, well, not actually, it's more in the middle, there's a chat icon, which some folks have discovered already because they were sending us questions. Then when you click on that, you will see this sidebar for chatting. And as messages come in, they fill up that sidebar. I might as well look to see what we got. Yep, okay, got a few messages there. All right, the first thing you need to know how to select who you're sending the message to. The default when you first open chat is everyone. If you click on the little down pointing arrow, in this case, it will give you some options of everyone in the meeting or any individual that's part of the meeting. You can pick who you want to send the message to, but be careful, because you don't necessarily, if you want to send a private message, you don't want to accidentally broadcast it to everyone in the meeting. And also beware, because if someone sends you a private message, the chat window then defaults to that as the recipient. If you don't, you need to specifically change the recipient back to everyone in order to broadcast the message to the whole group. So once you've selected your recipient, you type your message in the bottom section and press enter. And enter will send the message. There's no separate send button. And at that point, the message is displayed in the list for the recipient to see. All right, what questions do we have?
All right, so question, I may have missed it. How are you able to use the pointer? It's very helpful.
The pointer?
Yes.
Are you talking about the red dot I have now? Is that what she's talking about? I'm not sure what, or he, I'm not sure who.
Okay, well, if that person would would elaborate in more detail in the chat. Ron will respond to your question a little bit later. So
Well,
another,
anyway, if she's talking about, if the person's talking about the red dot, that's a feature of the PowerPoint that I'm using. They call it laser pointer.
He's talking, I think, about your green arrows that you probably laid in before as part of the image.
Oh, the
I
green
think
arrow.
that's what they're talking about.
Okay, that's about using PowerPoint, which is a little outside the scope of today's discussion. If they want to email me afterwards, I could just, I mean, it's just putting a graphic image on a slide. That's all that was.
okay. All right, another question. If an instructor wants to have students work in assigned groups during a Zoom session, how would the instructor set it up?
Okay, you're talking about breakout rooms. I don't think I'm going to have time to discuss breakout rooms today. Again, if you want to contact me afterwards, I have another set of slides I could send you for that as well.
Okay, all right. There's also a view where you can reduce speaker to small box on the screen. Very helpful when someone is screen sharing.
Right. Yeah, that was when I showed, where'd it go? When you see this little screen, the floating screen of participants, the speaker only one is the middle box there that will put a small, actually it's a resizable box. It'll start as a small box with just the speaker, and you can make that larger if you want, which will probably cover up whatever screen is being shared. So, but that is a possibility.
All right. Okay. What are the steps under video setting to set up a background behind yourself as a speaker?
I am not going to get into that. You can get into a lot of trouble when you play with those background settings. Well, all right. Just to be, let's see if I can get to mine. There we go. Like if I turn on my virtual background, if your computer's not up to it, you get something looking like this, which is kind of entertaining, but not helpful. So that's kind of more advanced Zoom, and maybe we'll have an advanced Zoom class by someone who has a computer that can handle that, those settings.
All righty. Okay, in a comment, there's also a view where you can reduce the speaker to a small box on the screen, and that's helpful when someone's screen sharing.
Right.
All right.
Okay, any other questions?
Okay. How can we lock the screen view? I found that I accidentally move my Zoom tools sometimes mid-meeting.
I haven't found a way to lock that. I'd have to look into that. As
Right.
yeah, and I've done the same thing. Is I accidentally clicked on something, and all of a sudden something disappeared or moved, and where'd it go?
All right, Ron, that covers it with the chat for the moment, sir.
Okay, let's move on. Screen sharing. Okay, first I'm going to talk about if someone else is sharing the screen and you're viewing it. When someone else is sharing the screen, at the top of your screen, it'll be a notice that you are viewing someone else's screen, and then some view options. So we're going to look at some of those options. The main one I have used from this list is side-by-side mode. So normally when you start screen sharing, you may either see the person's screen with a row of videos across the top, or you might see a full screen version with the floating video list. Side-by-side mode will switch it so that part of the screen has the presentation and the other part shows the people who are the participants in the meeting. That gives you the option to resize things should you need to do that by grabbing this double vertical parallel bars here. You grab that and you can resize it, so you can make half of it, do half and half, or you can even have the participant list larger than the shared portion of the screen itself. And you can, once you've selected side-by-side mode, if you go back to the view options, the list now shows you side-by-side mode with a check mark next to it. If you click on it again, it will turn off side-by-side mode and put the list of participants back where they were to begin. Now, if you want to share the screen yourself, first thing you need to I need to point out is that this is talking about sharing a screen, not a file. So it's expecting, it's going to look for screens you have open. So if you have like a spreadsheet you would like to share, you need to make sure that you have opened that spreadsheet and selected the tab you want, and then select the screen sharing button. If you haven't opened it yet, the Zoom screen sharing will not be able to open that file for you. So on the bottom part of your screen, in the middle, is a green button that says Share Screen. You click on that to start screen sharing. And the other thing you need to know is that the host needs to have enabled screen sharing. If it prevents you, you might need to contact the host and asking them to enable screen sharing for you. Once you initiate, you've clicked on that button to initiate it, you will get a list of all the screens that Zoom is aware of that you have open on your system. So at that point, you need to pick the one out of the list that shows what you want everybody else to see. You click on that, and then you click on the share button. And at that point, it will start sharing the screens. I've been in some presentations where people had difficulty getting the screen sharing to work, and I think it's because they missed the last step. They never clicked on the share button itself. If you're sharing a video, you need to be careful in this screen on the lower left is a text that says share computer sound. You need to make sure you've checked that if you're showing a video, or the video will play and you won't hear, no one will hear anything. So that you need to make sure you've looked out for that. Once you start sharing the screen, you will get a green border around the screen you're sharing to help you confirm that you're sharing what you think you are. And then, surprise, surprise, your control bar has moved to the top. So the first few times I started doing this, I frantically looked at the bottom, where's my control bar? It is now on the top. And in addition to the control bar, has a little message saying you're sharing the screen, and gives you the option to stop the share. There's also an annotate option for screen sharing. I don't anticipate that anyone would have much use for this. It's more of a collaboration tool. But I'm presenting it because you need to be aware that others may discover this and start playing with it. So I've been in some presentations where all of a sudden little smiley faces show up on the screen. It's because someone's discovered the annotation. But if you click on that annotation, you get a list of things you can do. You can put text on the screen, you can draw shapes, there's something called stamp, a variety of things. And then you can add them to the document on the shared screen. So this is showing a couple places where there's some text was added in, and I put a stamped an arrow on it. So there's also the option, if you click on the trash can, you can clear, if someone started drawing on your shared screen, you can clear all those out if they're getting in the way. And you can also, the person sharing the screen has the option to disable the other participants' annotations by going up on the More button on the top with those three dots again. And that's one of the options, is disable annotation if it's becoming a problem. You can also, if you have annotated a screen, you can save that screen by clicking on the save icon. Again, you're in the annotation bar, and Zoom will confirm that the screen was saved. Once you're done sharing, go back up at the top. There's a red button to stop the share. You click on that, and you will return back to a normal looking screen. If you have saved a screen, you need to know where to look for it. In your documents folder, you will find a Zoom folder, which Zoom put there for you. Inside that Zoom folder are several other folders for every Zoom meeting you've been part of. You find the meeting that you were just part of, select the screen file, or select the folder, and then find the screen file you want. And that's, in this case, here's a screen showing a screen that I had saved in another session. All right, any questions at this point?
The question is, can I blur my camera background with Zoom?
That's one of the video controls. Well, blurring it, you can replace it so that that would probably, to blur it would probably be, you pick a background image you want that looks like a blur. There's not, I'm not aware of any separate blur option. No.
All righty.
Video settings. Yeah, well, there's some advanced settings. It might be a limitation of my laptop can't handle things, so they're not showing it to me. I'm not aware of one.
Yeah.
A specific, a separate blur option.
Yeah, for example, I know that Skype has that blurred background feature. Perhaps Zoom does not. All right, so next question. Okay, is there a way for it to be, and let me just look in more detail. Is there a way so that the content of the chat is still available even after the video part has ended?
Yeah, actually, thank you for bringing that up. I should have shown you to do that. There is an option in the chat to save the chat. In the line, let's go back to that screen. Come on. Where is that? Oh, that's not what I want. Oh, arranging. Went the wrong way. Okay, let's, on your chat screen, where you select on the line where you select the recipients, there's a little icon with three dots. If you click on that, there's an option to save the chat. And you will find the chat the same way I showed you. If you save a screen, it goes in the folder, in your documents folder, under Zoom, under the folder for the meeting you were in. and it's saved as a text file. You can just double click on it and it will open for you.
Alrighty. Okay.
Any other?
Okay, I've seen the option to save the chat, and I think you have to enable it. You have to enable it from the beginning, otherwise it will only capture from the moment you enable it.
Actually, it should be captured when you join the meeting. So if you join, if people have been putting things in the chat and you haven't joined yet, when you join that meeting, you will not see the things that went in earlier. But I'm not aware of any enabling. I've been in all the meetings I've been in. Whenever I asked to save the chat, it was available, unless it's an option for when you schedule the meeting. But every meeting I've been in has had that option to save the chat.
Okay.
Well, let me see with this one. Yeah, okay. It's turned on for this meeting. So.
Okay. The bar and moving it. So PowerPoint options are available without moving from full screen.
Can you read that question again?
Okay. The participant says the bar with a question mark and moving it so that PowerPoint options are available without moving from full screen.
Oh, if you're doing sharing a PowerPoint. See, I've got the advantage, I've got two monitors. If you're doing a single monitor, yeah, I think if you're doing a single monitor, you just, you don't have all the same controls, or you have to, that's more a question of how PowerPoint works. There might be some special hotkey you have to push to get the options. I'm not sure how to get the different controls. All I know with a single monitor is you can, it's got the controls to move forward and backward and end the show. So that's actually a PowerPoint question. I'd have to do more research to answer that.
How do you make sure you have good lighting and a background if you choose to share a video?
I guess they mean the video of themselves, like that is in the participant list. Because if you do a screen share of video, it's just whatever of that video was recorded. So if they're talking about lighting and background, I imagine it's talking about the image of themselves, and that had we actually, I would advise for that. We've had a presentation by Lindsay Ruffin back a few weeks ago on a Thursday evening. Go to our website and or go to our YouTube channel and view that, because that's discussing lighting and backgrounds. And you know, at this point I have a, let's see, over in that direction I have a light sitting slightly above my desk, and in the other direction is a window that I have mostly closed off, because if I open it up, this side of my face will be completely washed out. But that took a lot of playing to find out something that worked. And the background, you might notice I have a big painting covering what's hiding behind my shelves there.
How do you save a recording, preferably to the cloud?
To the cloud. Well, that's an option. I'm going to show how to schedule a meeting. And that's definitely an option. To save to the cloud is an option when you schedule the meeting. I wasn't going to do much with recording, but if you do want to record it, There is on your control bar on the bottom of the screen, there is a red button that says, should say record, come on. Yeah, it says record. And that will record locally. If the host starts it, I think it'll record where the option said when you schedule the meeting.
And one of our participants has recommended going to YouTube and to type in how to look good on Zoom. And let me just take it a step further. Participants, feel free to go to the 40 Plus website and to click the link for the 40 Plus podcast on YouTube. And you can learn more about how to set up your lighting and background by way of the Lindsay Ruffin Thursday monthly presentation delivered last month, as Ron referenced.
Yeah, that's a whole topic to itself, which is why we had him come in and discuss that.
Okay. All right, Ron, another question. Can you speak to how you use two monitors?
Well, I'm using it for PowerPoint, and PowerPoint figures out if you've got a second monitor. And so it sets up one monitor has the full screen presentation. The other monitor has, I don't think I can share that. Let's see if I can share. Well, yeah, I'm going to try to see if I can share what my other, there it is. Share screen. No, I can't. Well, maybe I can. Let's try sharing that. All right, this is the second screen that PowerPoint puts up. It shows yeah, it's got the okay, you can't see my arrow. It shows what slide is currently being presented. It shows what the next slide is, and any notes you have for the presentation, and it's got some controls over underneath, like you can, will that show up? Here we go. So that by clicking on that little pen light, you can get the laser pointer options and some other highlighters and things like that. And of course, the options to go forward or backward in the slideshow. But that is that's a PowerPoint seminar. Let's go back to sharing that. Any other questions?
No, just a comment from the same participant whose question you responded to. And she says, great idea. Ron uses one screen for Zoom and one for PowerPoint, and that she'll have to try two monitors. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. All right. Let's see, what time is it? I think I need to. All right, quickly, very difficult, quitting the meeting. Single slide. You'll notice in your control bar at the bottom left in red, it says leave meeting. You click on that, it'll give you a confirmation to make sure that you really want to leave, and then you're out. Okay. Oh, okay, we're on time here. Scheduling.
Ron, there's one more question, sir, if I may.
Sure.
Okay, if the session's being recorded on all the chats, even private ones, are they saved with the recording?
I believe so, because I know the recordings I've looked at, it's usually multiple files. One is a text file, so I would expect that's the chat. I never looked into the text file to verify that, but I would expect that includes the chat with the recording. All right.
Done, sir.
Okay, now if you ever need to schedule your meeting, actually at this point, I am going to switch over to scheduling a meeting. So if you've got a Zoom account, you can sign in at zoom.us. You can go to zoom.com also, but it'll just forward you to zoom.us. And when you sign in, all right. If you've never seen Zoom before, here's the online Zoom screen. It takes you right to the meetings option feature, and then one of the prominent buttons is schedule a new meeting. So you click on that, and then you can change the name to my next meeting or something like that. Give a description if you want. Tell it when the meeting's going to start and end, or start and what the duration is. It warns you. So I have not. I'm using the free plan, so it's warning me that if I have more than if I have 3 or more participants, my meeting is limited to 40 minutes. You can schedule any number of one-on-one meetings with the free plan, and there's no time limit to how long those meetings will go on for. You could have it generated automatic meeting ID, or go with the one that's assigned to your account. At this point, Zoom has made it really difficult to turn off passwords. So it's going to generate a password for it. You can change that password, but I have not found a way to turn it off yet. You can specify if you want video on or off for the host and participants. And other meetings, there's an option called join before host. So if the host hasn't started the meeting yet and people are starting to come in, the meeting will allow them in. They can chat among themselves. There's an option to mute people as they enter, so that if you don't want to if someone's entering in the middle of a meeting that's already going on, they don't disturb those who are already participating. You could turn on a waiting room, which is another security feature. We'll talk a bit about that later. And you can have it record automatically. There are other settings, if you go over to the settings tab, that will it will tell whether it should record things on the cloud or locally to whoever's started the recording. And there's other options there as well. When everything's set up the way you want, you hit save, and you've got a meeting scheduled. That is one way of doing it. Now, let's see here. Okay, there's a delay. I have a second monitor here showing me what is actually being shown. And it's not sharing it. Okay. I'm going to have to reshare. Oh, you know what? I can't show you this. Zoom, Zoom, among the things it has, the features it has, is it has a feature that it will not share its own Zoom screen, which is what I wanted to show you. So I need to go back in. Oh, okay. That's what I need to share. Okay, now I'm sharing. Another option is that it provides add-ons. I'm using Outlook for my mail and calendar. There's also an add-on for Gmail and other Google Calendar, things like that. So I can go into my calendar and I could pick a certain time and then say, schedule a Zoom meeting. Yeah. And I click on that option, schedule a meeting. And is it, well, it did pop up a new meeting, but that's not in the shared screen. But it pops up a little box so I could fill out all the meeting information, and I could click continue, and it will schedule the meeting in my calendar, which is how I most often end up scheduling Zoom meetings, is going right into the calendar. So there's two options. The third way, let's start sharing this again. Is with a Zoom. I showed you that. Showed you the calendar. I didn't get a picture of it. Oh, I know. Well, okay. On the Zoom application on your desktop, which is what this screen shows, has a schedule box there. So that's a third way you can schedule a meeting, is by clicking on that, and it will prompt you for additional information. Okay, so that's scheduling, starting a meeting. So you've already scheduled something. If you're logged in, and on your meetings feature in your Zoom account, I showed you the button for scheduling a new meeting. It also shows you a list of what meetings you have scheduled, and there's a start button there. That's one way of starting your meeting. On your desktop application, where we talked about scheduling with the schedule icon, you can also click on a start button there. It shows you meetings you've scheduled. You can start the meeting there. Once you've started the meeting, you are now the host. And the host has more options on their control bar, the main one being the security option. That's your basic bar. And you notice there's the triple dot icon with more underneath. If that shows other options that are available, which includes breakout rooms. We don't have time to go into breakout rooms this morning. The host can mute and unmute participants. That's available by bringing up your participant list. You click on the Manage Participants icon, and it shows, you get a sidebar with all the participants in the session. If there's a participant you want to mute, you click on that participant's name, and once you do that, some buttons show up, one of which is the mute button, so you can then mute them. This all too often becomes necessary. The time most becomes necessary is if there's a lot of background noise and that person hasn't muted themselves, or you get a case where participants start talking over each other, or when you're playing a video, you might just want to mute people so that the video can be, so nothing interrupts the video. Let's see. Oh, the same for unmuting. You find the person's name, If they're muted, you'll have an option to unmute. And then it doesn't really, from what I've seen, Zoom doesn't turn their microphone on immediately. It basically invites them to confirm that they will unmute themselves, because sometimes there's something going on and the person doesn't want their mic turned on remotely. If they know they've got a lot of background noise, or there's someone else in the room who's trying to tell them something. So when you unmute them, it gives them the option to unmute themselves. You can also mute everyone at once. On the bottom of the participant list is a mute all button. All right. Okay, and then quitting. So there are all sorts of other features the host can do. These are the ones that you'll most commonly deal with. As you can see, a lot of these screens have more options. You can click on more and it will show you other things you can do as the host. All right, let's move on to quitting the meeting. Now, when we talked about if you're an individual participant, you leave the meeting. If you're the host, you have the option to end the meeting. If you choose to leave the meeting, Zoom is going to pick someone else to be the host and the meeting will continue. But if you want to actually end the meeting, and on your control bar on the far right in red letters, it says end meeting. Now that will give you an option to just leave, but if you're the host and you're going there, you probably want to end the meeting for all, and it gives you the button to do that. And yeah, you just click on the end meeting, and everybody's out. The meeting has ended. There are no more people. Everybody else is forced to leave. All right. Any questions on that last section? Scheduling and being a host.
Yes. Okay, I've had good luck using Zoom on my phone, but I'm not sure about using a lot of memory and battery. And this person says they have an extended battery phone case.
That's a lot of that. I don't know about the Zoom app itself. Some of that might depend on whether it's an Android or iPhone. That's. Yeah, I'm very familiar with using Zoom on Windows, and only slightly familiar using my iPhone. One thing I'd point out on using in your phone, some people do use it very well, but on phones and tablets, if I've been in situations where people wanted to enter something on the screen, and all of a sudden you see these fingers coming toward you as they try to type on the keyboard, which is right underneath the camera. So you be careful that you don't give the impression you're trying to poke somebody in the eye when you're using your phone or tablet.
Good point. How are Zoom tabs added to Outlook?
It actually gave me an option. I believe when you I'm trying to remember where it showed up. I'm pretty sure when I scheduled a meeting in the Zoom web page, after I scheduled it, it said, "Hey, we've got this nifty add-on for Outlook." I know that popped up, and I probably because it saw my email address was at outlook.com. I imagine if it was at gmail.com, it would have said something similar for Gmail for Google, but I haven't tried that. But I believe what happened is when I scheduled something, it offered the add-on, and I say go ahead and install it.
Okay. What's a Zoom owner versus host?
I'm not familiar with the owner term. Yeah, I know they have hosts and co-hosts. The hosts can be passed around. One of the options I didn't show you is you can make someone else the host. Um, you can also specify co-hosts, which have limited host features, like they can be admitting people from the waiting room while the host is running the meeting. But I'm not familiar with a term called the Zoom owner. And the only thing I could possibly think of is if I schedule the meeting, but someone else was running it as the host, I might be considered the owner. But I'm really not familiar with that term.
Maybe the person means that they have a Zoom account. So
Okay.
I don't know if that's what they mean, but that might be it.
Well, that's okay. That would make some sense. Like 40 Plus has a Zoom account, which is what you're using now. So in that case, 40 Plus would be the owner. And for this meeting, Jeffrey Collins is the host. So we went into the 40 Plus account and logged in, or started the meeting from there. But yeah, I guess you could say 40 Plus is the owner of this meeting, and Jeffrey Collins is the host.
Okay, we have a question and a comment. Under more for mute, is there an option to kick someone out?
Yes, it's a security feature, which we're going to go into next.
Okay, and the participant goes on to state, believe me, there are occasions when this is necessary.
Yes, I believe you.
How do you extend the meeting beyond 40 minutes if you have the free Zoom account?
If you got the free Zoom account, your only alternative is to end the meeting and start a new one. I'm not aware of any way to extend. I even had one. I was setting up a trial last night, and I had two laptops and my phone all logged into the same thing, and then it flashed up a message that I had 10 minutes left. So I logged out the third one, and so I was meeting with only two, but it still held me to the 40-minute meeting limit, because at one point in the meeting there were 3 people in on it. So yeah, I'm not aware of any way to extend it.
Yes, you can actually, everyone can, leave the meeting, wait a minute, and then at least
Oh,
as of last week, immediately log back in using the
back into
same
the same
info.
meeting. Okay, so you actually got out of the meeting and got back in. Yeah, the meeting. Okay, they don't make it convenient at any rate. It's not like you can go to the button and say, give me 10 minutes more time.
If I could add to that, I don't know if you can hear me, but if I could add to that, it also serves as a good time to break. So you could say,
Oh,
all right, we're logging off now, and you have 5 minutes or 10 minutes to sort of stretch or whatever you want to do, and we'll be logging back on at X o'clock.
okay, we have some experienced Zoom users out there. I like that idea. It tells you when yeah, use Zoom to remind you that people are getting worn out. Okay, I like the good suggestions. Thank you.
Can you go Zooming through your smart TV?
If the smart TV can run a browser, it should be able to run, because Zoom can run through a browser. I tried that last night. It seemed very sluggish, but Zoom can run through a browser. So if you could bring a browser up on your smart TV, yeah, I suppose you can do that.
Okay. All right. So what should or can you do to the shared screen during a 5-minute break for longer Zoom meetings?
A 5-minute break. Well, I mean, I don't know if there's anything you should do. You might want to unshare it so the people who are um, who have returned from their break can relate to each other, um, and they could see each other on the screen easily. But I mean, you could just leave the slide, the shared screen up, or not, or put a different screen up saying, "Be back in 5 minutes."
Okay, another question having to do with chat, and this is a follow-up to an earlier comment from the same participant. When the host quits the meeting, is there any way for a guest to access the chat? Sometimes people have URLs or other things in chat that I've wanted as a guest and thought I'd get after the meeting in the chat.
I've gotten in the practice, if things are being put in the chat that like URLs or just people's email addresses or other useful information, I've gotten the habit of just every few minutes saving the chat, so that way when the meeting ends, I'll have the chat available. The host for recorded meetings, the host will have recorded, as we talked about earlier. I believe the host has access to the saved chat as well. And I've been in some meetings where they've just afterwards just emailed that chat to everyone who participated.
Okay. What's the best way to share music during breaks? And she goes on to state, share a YouTube screen or play from another device. And this is a question I've asked of you in time recent, Ron.
Sharing music, the best way would probably be trying to do a YouTube video for music. The YouTube is the ones I've watched, the videos I've watched, the sound from the video often gets slightly garbled. Trying to share it in Zoom, you might have better success going to a something like Spotify or something that just shares the music. Share your Spotify screen. Make sure you check that box that computer audio is being shared as well. I haven't tried that. Probably the worst way to do it is play it on your phone and hold it up to your microphone. That's probably not very useful at all. But most of the time, if there are breaks going on, people are getting up and wandering off. So I mean, you could share music, or if the music isn't being shared, the people who stay behind can have a conversation. Anyway, you could play around with. One advantage with the desktop app, if you've got a phone or a second computer, you can set up your own Zoom meeting and play with some of these things, which how I learned Zoom and got some of these screenshots that I got. So you could try something like Spotify or Pandora, sharing that, see what you get.
Okay. So when are the host and co-host assigned? Is it during the meeting setup?
The host is whoever starts the meeting. The co-host can be set up when you're scheduling a meeting, but I think there's an option to make someone the co-host when the meeting started also. That's probably one of those options on the participant list. When you click on a person, you could definitely make shift host from one. If you're the host, you can pass that to someone else, which I've seen done on a number of occasions.
A comment having to do with Zoom on an Android phone, and the participant states it works very well, no battery issues. The gallery, of course, is much smaller, so if you want to see many participants at once, a computer is better.
Yeah, and yeah, the few times I've played with it, it's like some of the things that I can't. You had to swipe from one screen to the. If like you wanted to, if it was a shared screen, I think you had one. You could look at that, or you could swipe over and see the people, or something like that. Um, but yeah, they make it work. It's just going to look quite a bit different from what I'm presenting here.
Okay. All right. On free account, if you're with just one other person, it will stay on. Otherwise, do as Ron suggests with setting up a backup meeting. So, comment?
I like to see. Actually, I heard earlier, just everybody log off and then log back on in a few minutes. I might start trying that myself.
All right. On some Zoom calls, I can copy and paste info from the chat and put them in an email to myself. But on other calls, the copy function seems to be disabled. Is there a way to get around this and copy from the chat?
You know, I have encountered that, and I don't know what was done to shut that off, and I haven't played with it anymore to see. Because the save chat may also have been disabled when that happened. Yeah, I don't have enough experience to give a good answer for that. You might have to contact the host and ask if they've got a copy of the chat afterwards that they can email to you.
Okay. Another comment in the form of a tip. You don't have to wait before logging back into the same call. This person does it regularly with groups that they lead on Zoom.
Wow.
So,
Oh, okay.
all right.
Well, some good tips there about using the free account, getting around the. I mean, it's still a little inconvenient. You have to log off and log back in, but it's to save some money that is helpful.
Okay. All right. That does it with this round of questions, sir.
Okay, we're on to our final section here. Where are we at? Oh, I better hurry. Okay, security. Okay, I'm going to go through various steps in security here. The first step is don't broadcast your Zoom meeting ID on social media. This is an actual screenshot from a Facebook page. So you can tell what time the meeting is and how to log into the meeting. I was in that meeting. We got bombed. So don't do that. Second one is require password, but as I showed you before, Zoom makes it really difficult to leave the password, to get rid of the password. So this might be something that you can't, it's Zoom forces it on you at this point. Third level of security is enable your waiting room. You can do that when you schedule the meeting or on your host. If you're logged in as a host, you have a security icon. And one of the things you could do is enable the waiting room. Yeah, there's so that it's you experience the waiting room with this meeting. You can turn that on and off. You can maybe when just before you start the meeting, maybe you don't want a waiting room, but then afterwards turn it on. The host has control over the waiting room. And once the waiting room is turned on, people can't join the meeting directly. They have to wait until the host admits them. The fourth level of security is you can lock the meeting. If you have a meeting where you know who is going to be attending and you've got everybody on the list is in the meeting, you can lock it. At that point, no one else can get in. And so everybody's prevented from joining the meeting. But you do have to be careful with this because if someone accidentally drops off, you have to unlock it so they can get back in, or they're stuck outside the meeting. But that's that. So Zoom has been addressing the security issues that have been encountered, and you can get if you got a waiting room and you got the meeting locked. I think you're pretty secure as no one's going to be breaking into your meeting. Just to point out, okay, you can also disable screen sharing from the same menu. Um, one of the things that the bombers like to do is take over the meeting by sharing the screen and then drawing things over it, and of course, unmuting themselves. And so you can lock down screen sharing so that only the host can share the screen. You can, oh, there's a chat. So you can turn off chat for participants. And you can keep people from unmuting themselves. That's more useful than something like a webinar type setting where someone's giving a presentation and you really don't want the 200 people that are attending to be able to start talking over the presenter. And here someone asked about removing participants. That's an option on this list as well. Okay, any questions about security?
If someone drops off a locked meeting and wants to return, will the host get a message that someone's trying to join the meeting?
I believe that my understanding is they will not get a message. So the host has to be on top of that and go to this screen and select unlock or click on. All these have a check mark. So if it's a check mark next to lock, you need to click on it so it unlocks the meeting. But for the waiting room, the host definitely gets a message that someone's in the waiting room. For a locked meeting, my understanding is they don't get any message.
All right. Okay, that's the last question.
I could play with that and see. I haven't tried that with a locked meeting. All right. If you want to connect with me, here's my email address and my LinkedIn. And this is being recorded, as most of the 40+ presentations are, and will be available on our YouTube channel. Thank you, folks, for your attentiveness and also the good suggestions I've heard from a number of people. I learned more about Zoom in this presentation myself.